In your research, did you discover anything about how the conception of body image and whether it
Mm,
has changed or not changed since
yeah,
1897?
absolutely. At this particular moment in history, in like the 1870 to early 1890s, you had a much more celebratory image of the plus size woman in particular because it was a sign of immigrant success, right? There's this idea of kind of the shivering, huddled masses coming off at Ellis Island, starving and oppressed and thin, emaciated, whatever. And then the contrast to that is, well, you come to America and you are successful, and then you are able to feed your children, and then your daughter is like beautiful and buxom and healthy, and she glows. And, there was like this kind of famous thing about, I think it was President Garfield, I'm not sure, where they always celebrated the fact that like his favorite food was beef and he looked so healthy and prosperous. And it was a celebration of like the kind of conception we have of America as the land of plenty and the place of opportunity, and you can grow and succeed here and come from a land of starvation and then be in a place of bounty. And then there was a series of economic panics in the late 1890s that contributed to very anti immigrant rhetoric, particularly in the newspapers, which then they kind of reframed fatness as a, sort of like the idea of like welfare queens. Like these immigrants come to this country and they take our jobs and then they're fat and lazy and they don't contribute. And it almost overnight totally shifted via propaganda to like the demonization of the fat body, which is how, you get like the Gibson girls, which was like a turn of the century kind of fashion ideal of like very slim, very slender, very like quote unquote American ideal. And that really fascinated me was how the fear of the other intertwined with economic panic and the need to put the blame on someone who was not a rich robber baron who was really the problem, not the immigrants who were hardworking and here to make better lives for themselves. That need to protect wealthy interests and find a scapegoat ultimately really did, color our perception of fat bodies. And we even see it today, when recessions happen, thin bodies get much more celebrated. We see it currently on like quote unquote skinny talk. You can really tell how the economy is doing based on how we feel about plus size women in particular, or plus size female presenting bodies. So yeah, it certainly is. It was not only interesting to discover that, but then to watch the cycle in motion.
That's really interesting to know that this is a cycle through history. So I knew that there was anti-immigrant rhetoric back in the 1890s and that it's been cyclical or whatever. I had no idea that anti-immigrant rhetoric is also linked to how we as a society generally think about bodies.
Exactly.